What is peatland and why is it so important? I honestly don't know. I don't have the answer to this question, but luckily we're about to meet up with somebody who does, a guy named Sam Bentley, who's an ecologist based in Yorkshire. And today we're going to explore a little bit around the North York Moors, one of the UK's 15 national parks, and hopefully he's going to answer some of my silly questions. And by the end of this video, we're all collectively going to know the answer to the question, what's the big deal with peatland? So let's go and check it out. I did have an obvious question to probably get out of the way early on, which is, what is an ecologist?
So there's lots of different types of ecology. For me, I mainly work in upland ecology, so around the moors. I do some farmlands as well, and basically a lot of my job is identifying species and then creating, therefore, habitat maps and identification across large areas. And then depending on what sort of work we're doing, we then will aim to either restore habitat, create new habitat, or protect certain species within them. So basically a plant and animal scientist.
I feel like, for me at least, it's one of those professions that I never knew existed up until quite recently. And I'm not really that young anymore, like in my mid-30s. But for some reason, it's just never made its way onto my radar. But it sounds really interesting.
It's one that I think with the newer generations, there's a lot more interest in the environment anyway. I mean, obviously these positions have existed for years, but in terms of their actual public knowledge and public perception now, they are increasing. And I think the awareness, I mean, that's great, you know, for us in terms of just getting the message out to more people about this is an option. You know, you can get paid to restore, to conserve. And it's not just a passion project. You can actually make a life, make a living out of it. But then you get, obviously, the overarching benefits of the conservation, the restoration, managing these habitats, getting to experience and actually see them. The amount of people that wouldn't be able to come out to an area like this and actually even know it exists, let alone think you could make an impact on it, I think it's quite important that people get that message out and get to know about it, really.
So what can we say about where we're heading right now?
So we are going to go and see some examples of some peatland restoration. And peatland restoration pretty much has two main parts. Your initial part is restoring the hydrological integrity. Can
I ask another dumb question first?
Of course.
What is peatland?
So, that's a good point. So peat is a type of soil, and peatland is basically just defined as an area where the main substrate is peat. What we want, ideally, is deep peat, because that has the best chance to hold water and provides the best environment for the plants that should be growing on peat to actually thrive. But as shallow peat will also still classify as peatland. So a lot of the North York Moors, for example, you're looking more sort of like 10 centimetres of peat, which is shallow. Anything over 40, they class as deep peat. So peatland is just anything with a peat soil substrate, pretty much. So we're going to go see some peatland restoration. And we restore it in two different ways. The initial way is through changing the hydrological integrity of the peat, which is pretty much just keep more water on the peat rather than draining off. What we want to aim to do initially is keep all that water back on the moor. And the reason you want to keep water on top of peat is because peat holds a lot of carbon. Obviously, climate crisis, we need to keep as much carbon as we can out of the atmosphere. So by having water on peat or in peat and saturating it, it creates anoxic conditions. And that means there's a lack of oxygen there, which means it holds on to the carbon within it. Whereas when it dries, peat begins to oxidize and carbon is released. So what is initially a carbon sink and a carbon store then becomes a carbon source as it lets all that carbon back out into the atmosphere. The second stage is then the actual habitat regeneration or restoration, and that's usually done through the planting of your bog species on the areas that have since been restored. So there's the carbon side of it, but there's also just the habitat. It supports a lot of quite rare species, a lot of your wading birds, which are like critically endangered. So the curlew, for example, or the lapwing, critically endangered in the UK, they nest up here on moorlands. And having a healthy moorland habitat provides better feeding grounds for them, provides better nesting habitat for them, and will just hopefully give the species a bit more of a chance to recover from the vastly dwindled numbers that we're at currently.
It's interesting because a lot of people who maybe haven't spent time around moorland see it and it can look kind of desolate and lifeless.
Yes, yeah.
But it's kind of the opposite, right?
Yeah, so I get this sort of relatively frequently actually. It does look, I mean, looking out at it, you can't see any trees.
Yeah.
It just looks like a blanket of heather, really. But what you'll tend to see on your habitat rich or biodiversity rich areas, which is this blanket bog sort of priority habitat that we're aiming for peatland restoration, is a very, very biodiverse area. And it provides really good habitat for so many plants, invertebrates, your bird species. And you also get other animals that utilise more, you know, deers you often find up on moorland as well. But getting down into some of the plants, you get to see a range of different species, and that ecology and that biodiversity sort of comes to life a bit.
Is peatland typically then off? Would you just see it if you're walking footpaths, or would you have to go, not saying people should do, but if you were to keep an eye out for it, is it more likely to be far off the footpaths?
Not necessarily. I mean, that black soil we can see under there, that is peat.
All right.
So peat is a really dark soil because it's full of organic matter.
So can you tell it just from the colour alone? That's enough.
Yes, it usually, yeah. I'm hoping we'll see an example where we can see some layers where they're set up, but you don't have to go far. Oh, here we are. So this top layer here, this darker soil is peat, and you can see down here you've got a more clayey soil at the bottom. So that is your peat layer, and then below that you'll have a different substrate. So you don't necessarily have to venture off into the middle of nowhere to see it. You can observe it on the sides of paths, or generally in most upland areas of the UK, you will be walking on peatland, whether you sort of know it or not.
Okay,
really.
it's there. What is a substrate in simple terms?
A type of soil.
Type of soil, okay. What was it that kind of got you into ecology? How did you end up down that path?
It's kind of been always, I knew what I wanted to go into. I mean, even from being very young, I didn't ask, oh, can we watch cartoons tonight? It was, can we stick David Attenborough on? Like that, I always had an interest in the natural world, animals, plants. I can remember even from very young ages going to like bird reserves, IDing birds. I thought that was just amazing. So I've always had an interest, and then you get to a certain age and you realise, as I was saying, you know, you can actually make a career out of that interest and doing your part to protect it and save it and restore it and hopefully improve it. So it was kind of always in my mind. In terms of how I actually got into it, I did a degree in environmental science and did some work experience surveying in between all of that. And then once I graduated, obviously got to applying for jobs and etc. And found myself as an ecologist.
Nice. And you're making videos about ecology on just TikTok?
Just TikTok at the minute. I am posting some of them on YouTube Shorts as well.
Okay.
But I haven't progressed to any long form content yet, although that eventually will be coming. Eventually.
So if anyone is interested, what's your YouTube channel name?
It's just Sam Bentley Ecology and Nature.
Sam Bentley Ecology and Nature.
Same
YouTube
on TikTok as well.
Cool.
Right.
So this is peatland.
So this is peatland.
Cool.
Quite evidently dark soil.
As
much as that might not look that different to people, there is if you have them compared to another soil, it is quite obvious to look at.
Is it something you'll see all across England, or is it isolated in any way?
It's isolated to a degree, tends to be for your upland areas, but there is lowland peat. I personally haven't worked with or on any, but it is there. But you will see it a lot of Scotland, Northern Ireland, and sort of Northern England will have it. So you'll be able to see here, there's a difference between the heather height. So you've got some heather here on the right, which is this shrubby dwarf shrub plant, and then you've got this cut area here. So part of the restoration was to cut areas of heather and then instead inoculate it, which just means to plant your priority species. So here, sphagnum moss was done as an example. So here is some. So this very, very small patch of moss here was started out even smaller. It would have started out sort of that size, and it has since grown out in the last couple of years. And sphagnum moss is pretty much the end game of all peatland restoration. You want this on the moors as much as possible, as dense as you possibly can get it. You want it here, and that's for a couple of reasons. Your first reason is sphagnum moss are peat forming mosses. So the whole reason that there's peat here in the first place is because the roots of sphagnum moss, as they die off, they will eventually turn into peat. And it's very, very good at holding water. It can hold about 8 times its weight in water, which again, when your main goal is to keep water on the moors, you need it up here. It also is perfect in terms of you don't just get the environmental benefit, there is a human side of flood risk management. A lot of areas, particularly in the north of England, will flood. And having this up here, because this is where all the water falls in the first place, all your river sources, everything like that starts up on moors. So having some moss that will hold a lot of that water up here is perfect in that sense. The hope is that over time, obviously it's quite a long process, this will grow and spread and begin to actually re-establish itself on this section of the moorland.
How long is long in this context?
Well, you're looking at that has been there for 2 years.
Okay.
So that is very small, given the length of time. I mean, I've seen some that, you know, they've been there for 4 years, and you may be sort of that size. You're looking more like decades to be seriously noticeable. Some of your other species you have up here. So these are all cotton grasses. There's a few types of cotton grass, but the ones you'll mainly see on moor are these, which are hare's tail cotton grass, and then you've got this thicker reddish grass, which is just common cotton grass. And these are also your priority bog species. So as well as sphagnum, you would want to see these in the area. So it is good that you've got quite a good cover of them around this section, because that is indicating slightly wetter ground and an area which a blanket bog can eventually re-establish.
So for anyone hiking, is this a reach, or would that also be something you could spot to say maybe that's not the best place in wet weather to trying to navigate out of somewhere, try and avoid?
If you are trying to walk over an area, so you could see sort of, I don't know how well it'll pick up on the camera, but the small white cotton heads. If you see those, I would recommend not walking over that area. I would instead
pick another option.
I'd stick to the sort of heather that tends to be your drier areas, and that tends to make it so much easier. Or if you are going to walk on these, just be very careful where you put your feet, because it will be wetter ground.
Is this a piece of cotton grass as well?
It is.
A very tired looking. Over there's a lot.
Best way to tell these apart in terms of this versus hare's tail cotton grass. These have 3 very small cotton heads. They're quite difficult to see. So that's one there. There's a second one there, and there is a third one. That little seed here that hasn't got any cotton on it. So 3 heads is common cotton grass. This would only have 1 head if we could see any of the flowers. It'd be a single, quite large piece of cotton, effectively.
So walking through heather like this doesn't damage the heather. It's not like a
no, because of they are very robust heather. They're woody shrubs. So when you're stepping on them, all you're doing is pushing them down slightly, and then they'll just bounce straight back up in a day or 2. Or often, even as soon as you take your foot off, they just start to come straight back up.
Are these just really young sprouts of heather then? The really green ones? Or is that something else?
Yeah, so that is called crowberry. These produce a small black berry. They are another positive blanket bog indicator species. They are a type of dwarf shrub, so they are in the same general family as heather, but it is a different species.
Okay.
Your young heather will look more like this down here, so it does still have, it is slightly lighter green than your older heather up here.
Yeah.
But they are
not as light as,
not quite as bright
yeah,
as the crowberry.
Tell them apart.
Yeah. So these are peat blocks. So what will have happened is this area will have been identified as a natural flow path for water. That can be either artificial, in the sense of a man-made channel has been dug and the water is then flowing off, or you can have natural lateral surface flow, which is just where water is travelling over the surface of the moor and needs to be stopped on its way. Now, unfortunately, because it has been so dry, there's no pool of water there, but there should be, just back here, a pool of water directly behind this block that I'm stood on. And that will be, there'll be a channel, a small channel that leads into here, which will fill this naturally. And by having this block, you're again keeping that water on the moor. And then that area, you're going to reduce that peat erosion, you're going to reduce oxidation, and therefore the carbon being released. And you're going to reduce erosion, the peat erosion through wind and water as well. So obviously as water moves over a moor, it will carry the peat off with it. If you're losing your peat mass, you're losing your ability to store carbon. Therefore, it's ideal to keep it on. And wind erosion as well. When you get really dry peat, just quick winds is enough to whip it off the top of the moor. And obviously, when you're up in a very exposed area like this, it very quickly gets very windy.
So it's literally just been dug up and then plonked there?
Literally pulled out of the ground there and put here. And, you know, looking around, you can see it doesn't show a sign of it.
Yeah.
It is done in a way that maintains the area that the peat is pulled from. So there's another block immediately here, and you'll get this chain, and there's another one there, and another one there, and another one there, and they go on every 10 metres to really, so if that one, if the pool behind that one is flooded over, it will carry on down here, fill this pool, carry on down, fill that pool, etc. in that sequence.
So you can probably spot them as well if you're out and about.
Yeah.
You'll see these little mounds.
Yeah, if you see
look a little bit
mounds
different.
down a particularly, often you'll see quite an obvious drainage channel. There isn't a particularly obvious one here. This looks like it is more for the surface flow, but you'll often see them running down the middle of a channel, which it makes them even easier to spot because they will sit slightly above the top of the channel. What we're walking towards now is called an arc bund. And these are put in specifically for surface flow. So they're built usually about 10 metres long in an arc, sort of semicircle style shape. And this one is doing its job perfectly. So this is holding all of this water. And again, keeping it up here on the moor, because down there, you'll see a load of blocks sticking out of a drainage channel. That is where it was otherwise heading. So you tend to put an arc bund at the top of a drainage channel, and then any bits of water that are going to come off here are going to flow down and into here. And they'll be stored there, held there. Obviously that creates a new habitat. So you've now got a small aquatic habitat there, which you're going to get insect life and small bits of aquatic life in there as well. You do also see frogs on moors quite a lot, so this is going to be good for them. But it is also good for your other species, particularly again, your wading birds. As they nest up here, they need suitable feeding habitat, and this wetter ground is exactly what they would want to feed into, and the insect life that is brought here by the presence of the water is what they feed on. This is a timber dam. Now, these can go in multiple places and for different circumstances, basically. Example number one is the water is too fast flowing. So if water is flowing quite quickly down a channel already, you risk a peat block being washed out and washed away, and therefore it's no longer holding the water or trapping the sediment. Or if the peat surrounding the channel is not deep enough for a block to be made, you would then look to put something else in. There's two types that you tend to see on moors. One is made out of stone and one is made out of timber, and this is your timber dam. So what these do is they allow a small amount of water to pass through a thin gap in the dam. So there'll be another plank below this that's allowing a bit of water to slowly come through the channel and carry on moving, to not halt that natural process of movement of water. But what a timber dam will do is stop your peat sediment being pulled off. So you're reducing your loss of peat, but you're allowing the movement of water. And by slowing it, you're again having benefits to flood management, you're again having benefits to habitat creation, having that small pool of water, as much as it is now slowly moving because of the gaps in the dam, that small pool of water is going to allow for invertebrates to start to fill that area, or other small aquatic life, for example. And these will be similarly placed continuously down a channel to allow the water to move down but be slowed on its way. A question I quite often get is, why is there a cutout in the top of it?
Yeah.
So that is for if we have a massive rain event and it fills up really, really rapidly, it allows a significant gap for water to pass through it. Because you don't want to have very high flows being kept on moors. You do need all of that to move off at some point and return back down to the natural level for the water course.
So like, this is obviously a huge space.
Yeah.
Is there a limit to like how much you can cover in terms of your analysis and implementing these? Because it looks to like in the non-trained eye, impossible. It's just never ending.
They are massive. And initially, before we come out to an area like this to survey, we do try to map as much as we can from satellite imagery. So these channels will be visible from on your Google Maps or your Bing Maps or whatever, your satellite imagery. And you sit down in the office first and you map as much of it as you possibly can, so you have priority areas to come and look at. Because you're right, otherwise you will just be endlessly walking over here. And you know, from back here you could look 200 meters that way and think you can see a channel that you might want to block. But when you get there, it's just a bit of a dip in the heather, you know. I do have to say, I didn't plan this area. I wasn't an ecologist when this was getting done. I just know that there is some restoration here, so I can't take credit for any of this.
That's going to be the end of our video today. Massive thank you to Sam.
It's been a pleasure.
For showing us around and teaching me at least a lot of new things. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you've got any questions about what we've been looking at today or ecology, drop them into the comment section. If you want to see more from Sam, definitely recommend checking him out. TikTok or YouTube, just shorts for now.
Yeah, just for now.
Maybe there'll be some more stuff coming in future. I'll drop some links into the description. If you want to see Sam on some more platforms, putting him on the spot now, let us know in the comments and maybe he'll be popping up some other places in future. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting the channel recently, and fingers crossed, I'll see you next time.